You know, you caused such a ruckus last year, raising like $5 million on Kickstarter, really causing a ton of FOMO, gear acquisition syndrome, caused a lot of people to get mad. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. But you know, those things never last. Someone's come up to try and take your position. They saw the market that was there for such a unique grinder, and they were like, you know what, we want a piece of that action. And that's what happens in modern day, you know, competition, the market, the capitalism, all that stuff. And so, you know, I'm going to have to introduce you to someone that's trying to take your crown. He's a big boy, so watch out. The Geimori GU78. This is not a normal Lance video where I do months and months and months of testing, and you're going to see why as we get into the video, why I deemed it as a relevant video to shoot. Currently in its Kickstarter, so if you're watching this in the future, this was in a Kickstarter phase when I shot this. It's currently over $150,000 raised. Now, first and foremost, one of the most important things whenever you're bringing a product to market is that you offer something that no one else is offering, or you bring an innovation, or you bring something new to the table. Now, when Time War came out, they were offering quite a few things. They were offering very specific burr geometries that were, I mean, they created it. I've never in my life seen a hybrid burr that's half ghost burr, half normal flat cutting surface area. And it did a great job. Their Espresso burr was a little less unique, but it was still a little different than anything else really on the market. And then they also added the variable RPM, which isn't that new, but it still was an option. They added the most robust motor I've seen on a grinder at this price point. And they have this little fines catcher, which actually is very divisive. Some people hate it, but I love it. I refuse to use RDT on this, and I'm glad they don't have a deionizer inside plasma generator, because I want this to catch all the fines and chaff that it can, and I just don't use that in my brew. Even though I regret I was part of pushing some sort of FOMO, you know, unintentionally, I do think it deserved the praise that it got. This one of the things that it does is it gives you those big 78mm burrs. It also gives you variable RPM from 500 to 1500 with a little knob on the back using a PID controller. Gives a plasma generator inside of the grinder itself to lessen static, which is great. A lot of grinders are coming out with that now. The DF83 has it, and a lot of others. That's down to personal preference. If you really cannot stand static that's generated and you really want to have all that coffee in your cup, then that's a good thing, but it's not necessarily an innovative thing. So far, the only real innovation that I see on this, outside of maybe the aesthetic being kind of a new fun design, is they put a little plastic water bottle in the cap. Yes, there's a little plastic water bottle with a little silicone lid. And the idea here is you can spray your beans, or you can spray inside the hopper, which I'm not going to do because I don't want to put a ton of water inside of the hopper itself. And it's also really big. This is a very important note, so please listen closely. This is a pre-production unit. The company reached out to me and asked if I would like one for free. And as you know, I said, no, I don't want one for free, but I'm just going to buy one on Kickstarter. They said, we'd still like to get you one sooner than later. And I was like, if you are okay with me having a pre-production unit and I'm paying the price, okay. So I paid for it. I laud you, WIrsh, for doing that, because that is a courageous thing to do. You have to have a lot of belief in your product in order to send someone who is as nitpicky as me a unit. Because, as you know, I'm not always just singing praises. I like to point out things, especially when a lot of money is involved. They have this that kind of just comes off and on really easily. In fact, you can kind of like knock it off on accident, and it's not held on very well. Again, pre-production, but should be noted because this is something they're going to have to improve. And then you have this, which has pretty awful finishing currently. You're going to twist this, which is obviously much nicer than the 6-screw system that Time War has, but twist it, quick release system, and there we have the ball bearing that goes forward and back in order to change the grind size. Inside, we have our burr carrier. We pull this out, and then we see their burrs. I have a bit of trouble with. Now, it's not the fact that they are using this geometry. If you're curious why I'm saying anything about the geometry, it's because it's essentially the same geometry as my little tattoo here, which is the SSP multi-purpose burrs. Now, although SSP may have made this burr geometry famous in the home circles, he did not invent this burr geometry, and he doesn't have a patent on it. He's not trying to get a patent on it because it's not his design. In fact, it's Malkunig's. Malkunig, with their 71mm Guatemala and 65mm Kenya, have had this burr design for many years. They also have had augers in their grinders for many years. They are the ones who brought this innovation. But for some reason, they decided to patent these burrs. And that, I don't even know how you can get a patent for it when there is so much prior art outside of the 78 millimeter range. My only guess as to why they would do this is because Hansung at SSP has been working on SSP burrs for the Timemore 078. So it'll be 78 millimeter burrs with that cutting surface. They have two burr options. They have the filter option. They have the multi-purpose option. I'm very confident. They didn't tell me what they sent me, but this seems to be the multi-purpose option, mostly because the finishing teeth are not nearly as wide as you would expect a filter burr to be. As you can see, this has 3 screw holes, whereas the Timemore burrs, I have the hybrid burrs here, only have 2 screw holes. I have heard that from the team that they are planning on making it compatible with Timemore by doing 2 extra screw holes in here so that you can switch in and out of these burrs. Now this auger is very shallow. It's not really doing very much. It helps meet the feed rate into the burrs because there is a distance for it to travel, but it's not really doing the pre-braking, which is what really helps with everything. Another YouTuber, Our Coffee Shelter, showed what it looks like when you use just the auger without using the burrs, and it cracks maybe a third of the beans, maybe. I would wish that they would do something more like the Zerno is, or like the EK does, or like the Timemore does, where it's more robust grooves in order to cause more pressure between the chamber and the auger itself to crack them. They have made a change apparently where they've added a piece of metal right about here to lessen the amount of retention that can be stuck inside, but even that is still going to have about 0.5. Supposedly it doesn't do much exchange retention. It's kind of what gets in there gets stuck, and I think the chase for zero retention is a bit silly, but you know, it's also impossible because when you grind coffee you lose some mass whenever from the gases that off gas anyway. So anyway, let's put this back in and continue on. You may have already noticed this in the video, but there's a little issue with the top heaviness of this. So we do a little 1.4 kilogram push. Yes, I measured it, and it does that. I don't understand why the feet are so close together. I know they're lessening the height of this and they're making it a bit more compact, but they really need to put the feet on the bottom out to the edges because that is a bit silly. A power button on the front, it doesn't feel very good. I'm not a big fan of it, and it doesn't click very satisfyingly. I know that's a small thing, but when you're putting it on and off every day, that's a little annoying. It beeps when you turn it on and off. Not a fan of that. You have right here the kind of the final clicker system, and this kind of thwacks the grounds out. Dose cup, comically large. The Timemore one was big enough, and this is like David and Goliath kind of thing going on. It has a little groove for it, which I guess is fine, but I mean, this is so much more satisfying, right? One thing that they do kind of are really proud of is the fact that it is very quiet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grind some dark roast and some really light roast coffee through this grinder. We're going to take a look at the scattering, the fact that it's so clean. 1100 RPM, maybe about a 20 grind size, something like that. We'll use some dark roast, toss it in, and see how it goes. Get it going. You hear there's like a little tick in there. I don't know. Let's go ahead and do it. It's a clean grind, you know, plasma generator doing what it needs to do. Comes out nicely. The noise, it's okay. It's not like the most quiet thing in the world. They claim 60 decibels, but maybe that's just when it's off. But that's fine. You would expect it to be more quiet with the darker roast, so let's go ahead and do a light roast. But first, let's see what's left over here. Probably like 0.1. There was a bit there, but not too bad. Let's do this in the Timemore, because that's been one of their big advertisements is how much better it is than the Timemore at it. Now, I will say it probably will be better because this doesn't have a plasma generator, but let's just go ahead and take a look anyway. All right, so I've got it at about 1100 RPM to match what this was at, about the same grind size. Let's go ahead and hot start it. Okay, obviously the scatter is quite a bit worse, but honestly I think this one was a bit more quiet. And of course we have the fines collector at the end, so you'll see some come out. Try to get this without knocking off the fines. Okay. Now remember, this is super dark, so there's not really gonna be chaff. Chaff usually is very heavy here. We'll knock that off. All right. We had about 0.4 grams of fines that were left over. Now let's see what it does at espresso grind level with lowest RPM at a cold start with super light roast coffee. So we're gonna start it. Let's find where the burrs touch. Up. Let's start it. Let's find where the burrs touch. Let's start it. Okay, let me turn the RPM up. All the way up. There it goes. All right, we're at 500 RPM. Turn it off. Let's just make sure it's gonna work. Yes, all right, it's working now. All right, burr touch is about at 60. Sounds very misaligned though, because it's not a clean, oh, and it's gone. See, that means it's wobbling a bit. You hear it? So let's go around 0 and just make it really fine for people who may want to do blooming shots with ultralight roast. So here we go. This is a sample roast of a Kenya that is very light. We're just gonna dump it all in and cold start that bad boy at the finest setting. Let's, not the finest setting, but an espresso setting. Let's get it. Knock the leftovers, maybe go up in RPM. Mostly chaff is left. Oh, there's a little bean in there or something. Go back down. All right, well, that's quite coarse. That's actually like turbo shot range or not even fine enough for that. Let's go to like here. All right, we're gonna put this one in and we'll see how it goes. Okay. Yeah, it's got nice torque. So they do have it rated at 5 Newton meters of torque, which should be more than enough to chew through anything. If you remember the fellow Opus, which is chewing through green bean, is at 6 Newton meter, and that's overkill. So this does a fine job, and again, no real scattering. So it actually does pretty well at that, but it is certainly not quiet. That was pretty loud and a bit obnoxious, and took quite a while to grind actually for such big burrs. I guess the last kind of thing to talk about is, as you saw, you can go past 0 point. Each tick is 5.5 microns. They're looking to make it stepless. This one does have a stopping point, but you can always take out that peg so it doesn't actually stop. Here's the deal. I don't enjoy doing negative reviews or negative videos. I don't. That is not something I get super excited about doing, but it is something I feel like is almost a moral imperative as someone that has a platform and understands grinders and has had the access to as many grinders as I have of varying price points. The only way I'll make a negative review is if A, the company that is selling a product are lying, which they're not lying. I've only ever had to make one of those videos. And the second is if the product is insanely hyped. I mean, literally every time I go on Instagram, every time I get on Facebook, I get bombarded with ads for this. And the Kickstarter has been very successful so far. I felt that there was, a need to make something kind of showcasing what all properties it has, what all functions it has, and how it is in its current state. I want to say I don't necessarily think this is nearly ready for launch. I think they have a lot of work to do before it is something that is worthy of the amount of money you'll be paying, even at the early bird $599 price. The insides are not tight enough. There's way too much looseness inside. You can hear the rotary burst, similar to like the Gen 1 Fellow Ode, kind of just like flopping around. It's not really tightly in there. It doesn't seem like it was engineered very well. The auger needs to be more of a pre-breaker in order to really go through with their claim of less heat. You're not really helping very much by just transporting the beans. I think honestly this RDT needs to go. I think this is going to cause issues for people over time if the silicone seal leaks or something like that and it gets all into your grinder. That's not an ideal thing at all. I think that's just a problem waiting to happen. I don't think it's that loud. I think it's pretty comparable to the Time More. I just don't think it's necessarily a selling point. The finishing is quite rough and is not something I would want on a grinder. It doesn't feel very good to use. The edges are a bit sharp and this comes on and off quite easily. The fact that this even made it into a pre-production unit is kind of wild to me. I wish they would put a magnet here. I wish there was a magnet for the lid. Without the RDT, you could have just a lid, and it would bring down the size even another 2 centimeters. The fact they're using this much space for the same exact motor that's in this small Time More, I think speaks volumes. The button on the front is not very fun to use. It has some mess ups like you heard a second ago. It wasn't starting and stopping. I've had issues where it would seem like the birds were chirping at 0, even though they're supposed to chirp all the way over here, and I couldn't go past a certain amount because there was metal hitting each other inside. You see that? Isn't that weird? Yes. I think there's a lot to be done before they're able to release this and have the price be justified. Now, I could spend the next 4 or 5 weeks, going over this with a fine-tooth comb, but I think that would just be a waste of time in its current form. The amount of changes needed to be made, I think, is going to take a bit longer in order to instill confidence in me that this will be successful as I knew that the Time More would be. I think we just have 2 different products here with different aims, and right now the aim for this one is a bit too low for the price that they're asking for the market they're trying to go after. I hope that you enjoyed the video. It may have been a bit of a downer, but I am just honest with my thoughts. I think this is a great grinder. I recommend it to roasters all the time and to brewers, and I think it does this fantastic job. Now with Hansung coming out with burrs, with Le Brew, the new burr kind of company coming out with burrs for it, it's just increasing in its value. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, if you enjoy the way that I kind of approach things and, my experience with these things and my attempt to be as honest with you and authentic with you as possible, I'd love it if you'd consider checking out my Patreon down below. And now because I paid the early bird price, so it wasn't full price, I guess, but I paid what a lot of people paid on Kickstarter for this. This will be going to a Patreon member, or hit the like and subscribe on this video. That really helps with the engagement and helps my channel, and it's great. Thank you so much. Regardless of how the review may have gone, I hope that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.